The chamber of the Galactic Council was never quiet, not even in the early hours when most stars outside the station still burned faintly through the glass dome above. Rows upon rows of alien leaders sat in high seats, each one cloaked in power and arrogance. Their voices rose, collided, and filled the hall like thunder. Some argued over borders, some over taxes, and some over wars. To them, the fate of galaxies was nothing more than numbers, lines, and signatures. But on this day, something unusual happened. The doors at the far end of the hall opened with a heavy groan. All sound cut off as every alien turned. No one was scheduled to enter. No one was allowed without permission. And yet, there he stood, a human diplomat, his black coat brushing the marble floor as he walked forward slowly. Behind him, a second human followed, tall and silent, dressed in gray, his steps steady like a shadow moving across the stars. The council erupted with angry voices. "How dare a human enter unannounced?" one shouted. "This is a sacred chamber." Another hissed. "They are weaklings from a backwater world," someone mocked. The diplomat did not flinch. His eyes were calm, his voice even. "The council speaks of peace and justice, yet it ignores the warnings of Earth. I am here because you will not listen otherwise." The laughter was sharp, cruel. Aliens with jeweled robes, armored skins, and feathered crests all sneered at the lone human. In their minds, humanity was small, fragile, and unimportant. What could this single diplomat demand? What could this primitive world offer? But their eyes kept drifting to the man behind him, the silent figure who stood like a blade waiting to be drawn. His gaze never wandered, never wavered. He watched everything: the exits, the guards, the balcony above. The council leader, a scaled being with golden eyes, slammed his staff on the floor. "You were not summoned, human. You will leave now or be removed." The diplomat raised his chin. "Then remove me. But understand this: the danger I bring is not mine. It is yours." For a moment, silence fell again. The council chamber, so proud and unshaken, now felt strangely unsteady. And then it began. From the upper balconies, shadows moved, metal flashed. Blades and energy rifles appeared in hidden hands. The guards barely had time to shout before the assassins leapt down, their black cloaks spreading like wings of death. The council screamed. Bolts of fire struck the marble floor. Alien leaders scrambled from their seats. The chamber filled with smoke and sparks as assassins poured in from every side. And through it all, the human diplomat stood still. He did not scream, he did not run. His eyes turned only once to the figure beside him. The silent man moved. No alien truly saw how. 1 second he was standing still, the next he was upon the first assassin. A blade flashed in his hand, thin and silver, slicing through armor like paper. Blood sprayed across the white marble. The assassin fell before his body even understood it was dead. The second attacker fired a bolt, but the human rolled aside, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. His hand snapped the alien's wrist, the weapon clattering to the ground. A knee shattered the assassin's chest. Another corpse fell. The council could only watch in frozen disbelief. "This cannot be," whispered a feathered elder. "Humans cannot fight like this." But the truth was right before their eyes. The bodyguard was no ordinary soldier. He was death-given flesh. One assassin after another lunged, but none left the chamber alive. His movements were brutal, yet precise. Every strike was final, every step unbroken. Where aliens fought with elegance or technology, this human fought with something older, something raw. It was survival carved into muscle and bone. The diplomat finally spoke as screams and shots echoed around him. His voice was calm, steady, and cold. "This is what you feared to believe. Humanity is not what you think. We begged you to prepare for the storm. Instead, you laughed." A blast shook the chamber as one assassin triggered explosives. Shards rained down. The council guards fought back, but were cut down quickly. Through the chaos, the bodyguard shielded the diplomat, taking down attackers with impossible speed. One tried to retreat, but the human's blade struck him from 20 steps away, thrown with the accuracy of a predator's strike. When the smoke began to clear, dozens of bodies lay broken across the chamber. Black blood ran between the cracks of marble. The smell of burning cloth and flesh hung heavy in the air. The council members huddled. Together in fear. The diplomat walked to the center of the chamber. His shoes splashed in the blood of assassins. His shadow stretched under the great dome, tall and unyielding. He looked at the golden-eyed council leader, whose hands shook around his staff. "Now do I have your attention?" The diplomat asked. The leader's voice broke. What are you?" The diplomat pointed to the silent man, whose blade still dripped. "Not what, who. This is humanity's answer to your arrogance. You mocked us as fragile. You will learn what that word truly means." The bodyguard wiped his blade and sheathed it with a slow, steady motion. He said nothing, yet every alien felt the weight of his silence heavier than any word. The council was no longer laughing. Some whispered of exile. Others whispered of war. But none dared look into the bodyguard's eyes for long. They saw something there that chilled them deeper than any weapon. They saw a predator that had chosen to walk among them. The diplomat turned once more to the council. His words were soft, yet they carried like thunder. "You thought me weak. You thought Earth was nothing. But understand this, where I walk, death follows. If you will not listen, then perhaps death will make you listen." The chamber echoed with his voice, and none dared speak against him. And so, on this day, the Galactic Council met humanity not as a joke, not as prey, but as a warning. They summoned the diplomat, but what stood before them was far more dangerous. They had summoned death itself. The chamber stank of blood and smoke. Broken weapons and shattered bodies covered the marble floor. The council members sat in silence, too stunned to speak. Some trembled, their eyes wide. Others clutched their robes as if holding themselves together. They had always thought of humans as fragile, but the truth had spilled across the chamber in black and red stains. The human diplomat stood calmly in the middle, his coat untouched by the fight. His voice was low but carried through the silence, like steel scraping stone. "Do you understand now?" he asked. "Do you see what you tried to ignore?" His bodyguard stood behind him, motionless. The blade he had used was still wet, drops sliding down its edge and falling onto the marble. He breathed evenly, his eyes scanning every corner as if more danger might yet come. To him, the battle had not ended. To the aliens, the sight of him breathing was more terrifying than the corpses at their feet. A scaled counselor finally found his voice. This is madness. A human cannot fight like this. This is a trick." The diplomat's gaze turned to him, sharp as fire. "No. Trick, this is humanity. We are what survival has made us. You have lived in comfort, in high seats, behind fleets and fortresses. Earth did not give us such gifts. It gave us only hunger, storms, predators, and wars. You built walls to be safe. We became the walls." The words sank into the council, like poison. They had mocked Earth for centuries, calling it a death world with no value. Now they began to understand what those words meant. Suddenly, a cough echoed in the chamber. One assassin was not dead. He dragged himself across the marble, leaving a trail of blood behind him. He reached for a small device at his belt. The bodyguard was already moving. He closed the distance in a single stride and crushed the assassin's throat under his boot. The alien choked once, then lay still forever. The bodyguard bent, picked up the device, and tossed it to the diplomat. The council watched as the human turned it over in his hand. It was a communicator, battered but still working. He pressed a button, and a distorted voice spilled into the air. "Report," the voice demanded. "Is the council dead?" The diplomat's lips curved in a faint smile. He raised the communicator to his mouth, Not today. He crushed the device under his heel, sparks scattering across the floor. Gasps filled the chamber. You mean? One counselor began. Yes, the diplomat cut in. This was no random attack. This was not human defiance. This was your own council tearing itself apart. Someone among you sent them. The hall erupted in noise again. Some counselors shouted. For investigations, others for executions. Fear spread like fire through dry grass. They looked at each other, not knowing who was ally or traitor. The diplomat let the chaos rise for a moment, then raised his voice like a hammer. Enough. The word silenced them. It was not shouted. It was not loud. Yet it crushed the noise. Diplomat stepped forward. His shadow stretched long across the floor, meeting the feet of the council leader. You feared humanity, he said, but fear the truth more. There is rot inside your chamber. While you bicker over pride and taxes, your enemies cut your throats. And you laughed at us when we warned you. The leader's golden eyes darted across the room. His hands shook on his staff. This cannot be. It is, the diplomat answered, and it will only grow worse. You are not ready for what comes, but we are. His bodyguard finally lifted his head. For the first time since entering the chamber, his voice was heard. It was deep, steady, and cold as stone. Your walls will not hold. Your fleets will not save you. The storm is already here. And you are blind. The word struck the council like thunder. It was not only what he said, but how he said it. He spoke not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as death itself. A feathered counselor trembled and whispered, Then what do you want from us? Why are you here? The diplomat's eyes burned with a strange calm. Because your survival depends on it. And because you will not listen unless death stands in front of you. The council was silent again, but the silence was no longer proud. It was afraid. From the far doors, new guards rushed in, weapons raised, armor shining. They froze when they saw the floor littered with corpses, their enemies already slain by human hands. Slowly, they lowered their weapons, unsure whether to point them at the assassins or at the two humans standing tall in the middle. The golden-eyed leader rose from his seat. His voice was heavy. We cannot allow humans to threaten this chamber. The diplomat did not flinch. I did not threaten you. They did. He gestured to the dead assassins. I came to warn you. I came because Earth knows what waits beyond the stars, but you chose mockery over reason. And so death had to speak for me. The leader gripped his staff tighter, but his eyes betrayed fear. He had seen the bodyguard move. He knew he could not stop him. Another counselor whispered, Perhaps we should listen. The golden-eyed leader turned sharply. You would kneel to them? I would live, the other snapped. Can you promise survival? Look at them, one diplomat, one warrior, and we are shaken. Imagine an army of them. Imagine a fleet. Murmurs spread through the chamber again. The aliens looked at the diplomat with new eyes. Not as prey, not as weaklings, but as predators they had ignored for too long. The diplomat said nothing more. He let their fear work, let their thoughts twist. His silence was as sharp as his words. The bodyguard wiped his blade once more and slid it back into its sheath. He stood behind his charge, still and waiting. But every alien felt that if they moved against him, he would kill them before their hearts beat twice. The golden-eyed leader sat again. His voice shook as he said, This is not over. We will investigate. We will decide. The diplomat inclined his head. Decide quickly. Or the storm will decide for you. With that, he turned. His bodyguard followed. The great doors groaned open again, and the two humans walked out, leaving behind silence, fear, and the stain of blood that would never be washed from the marble dot. And though the council did not know it yet, their galaxy had just changed. For the first time they had seen humanity's truth. And the truth was dangerous. The council had laughed at Earth. Now they would never laugh again. And The council chamber remained in shock long after the humans left. The smell of blood still lingered, heavy and sharp, like a warning carved into the air. Guards carried away the bodies of assassins, their black cloaks dragged across the floor. But no one spoke. Not even the proudest among them could find the courage. The humans had walked out, yet their presence remained. The golden-eyed leader sat frozen in his chair, fingers gripping his staff so tightly the wood cracked. His mind replayed the sight of the bodyguard's blade cutting through armor, the sound of bones breaking, the calm voice of the diplomat. It felt less like memory and more like a wound that refused to close. Finally, a counselor broke the silence. He was feathered, with silver eyes that glistened under the dome. "We mocked them," he whispered. "But I saw what that man did. Faster than sight, stronger than steel. If this is only one human, imagine thousands." Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some nodded, some shook their heads. A scaled alien with crimson skin slammed his fist on the table. "Fear clouds you. This is nothing but a show. They staged the attack to frighten us. It was theater, nothing more." "Then who killed our guards?" the feathered one demanded. "Who tore through trained assassins like prey? If that was theater, then it was written in blood." Murmurs spread again, low and dangerous. The golden-eyed leader lifted his hand, silencing them. His voice was heavy. "We cannot allow panic. Humanity is a young race. They have no fleets, no empires, no power." The feathered counselor leaned forward. "And yet they killed an army inside this chamber. Do you not see? Their strength is not in fleets, it is in themselves. We live behind technology. They live behind nothing but their own will. That is what frightens me." The words cut deep. Some counselors looked away. Others whispered among themselves. For the first time, the council was not united by arrogance, but divided by fear. From the shadows of the chamber, another voice spoke, low and sly. A robed figure with pale skin, whose eyes never blinked. "Do not forget," he said, "the diplomat. Claim there is rot among us. A traitor who sent the assassins. If true, then the danger is not outside but within." The hall grew colder. Whispers filled the air again, sharper this time. "He is right. Who among us would dare? We must find the traitor." The golden-eyed leader tightened his grip. "We will investigate. But remember this, the humans gain power from our fear. Do not give it to them." Yet even as he spoke, he felt it himself. The bodyguard's eyes had looked at him once, only once, yet it had been enough. He had never known what it meant to be prey until that moment. Far away, in the hidden corridors of the council fortress, the human diplomat walked in silence. His bodyguard followed a step behind, his eyes scanning every shadow, every vent, every guard that passed. To others, it seemed like paranoia. To him, it was instinct. "They are afraid now," the diplomat said softly. The bodyguard gave no answer. "They will talk of us for years. Some will call us liars. Others will call us demons. But all will remember." Still, silence from the man in gray. The diplomat glanced at him. "You felt it, didn't you? That attack was not meant to kill them. It was meant to test us. Someone wanted to see what we would do, to see what we are." The bodyguard's voice finally came, deep and steady. "They saw enough." The diplomat smiled faintly. "Yes, enough to fear, but not enough to understand. And fear without understanding leads to war." Back in the chamber, arguments erupted again. A horned counselor barked, "Exile them. Exile Earth. Cast them into darkness before they grow." "Stronger," another, cloaked in white, shook his head. "No, if they truly are this dangerous, then exile will not save us. It will only make them our enemies." The feathered one spoke again. "Then ally with them, bring them into the council. If death walks beside them, let death walk with us." Chaos grew. Voices clashed. echoing off the high dome. For every counselor who called for exile, another called for alliance. For every cry of fear, there was one of curiosity. And in the middle of it all sat the golden-eyed leader, silent, torn between pride and survival. Finally, his staff struck the marble once more. Enough, we will meet again at dawn. Until then, guard the halls, seal the doors, and trust no one. The council dispersed slowly, each leader glancing over their shoulder, wondering which of their own might be the traitor. In the lower levels of the fortress, among the abandoned corridors where light barely reached, a different meeting was taking place. Shadows gathered, voices hushed. The assassins had failed, but their master had not given up. A tall figure in black armor stood before them, his face hidden behind a mask of steel. His voice was a whisper, yet carried the weight of command. The humans revealed themselves. He said, "And now the council trembles. Good. Fear spreads faster than fire. But the job is not done. The diplomat lives. His protector lives. And while they walk, our plan is at risk." Another shadow knelt. "What shall we do?" The masked figure raised a hand. "We strike again, but this time, not in the chamber. We cut them down in the dark, where no eyes can see. And when their blood flows, the council will turn on Earth. Humanity will be crushed before it can rise." The shadows bowed in silence. The diplomat returned to his quarters, a chamber given grudgingly by the council. It was wide but cold, its walls bare, its windows showing only the endless stretch of stars. He removed his coat, placed it neatly over a chair, and sat at the desk. His bodyguard stood by the door, still as stone. "You should rest," the diplomat said. The man in gray did not move. "You cannot watch forever." "Yes, I can," the bodyguard answered. The diplomat gave a faint smile. "Perhaps you can. But remember this, the storm is not only out there. It is here, in these halls. And soon, it will come for us again." The bodyguard's eyes stayed fixed on the shadows. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his blade. "Let it come." Outside the window, the stars burned cold and silent. But somewhere among them, fleets gathered, knives sharpened, and plans formed. The council thought they had seen the worst of humanity. They were wrong. What they had seen was only the beginning. The halls of the council fortress were never truly quiet, but that night, silence ruled them. Guards patrolled in pairs, their steps echoing against stone and steel. The smell of burning incense drifted through the corridors, meant to hide the lingering stench of blood. But no incense could cover fear. Fear had settled into the walls themselves. The human diplomat sat in his quarters, eyes fixed on the starfield outside the window. His bodyguard stood in the shadows of the room, blade resting at his side, always within reach. Neither spoke. They did not need words. They both felt the weight pressing against the fortress, the kind of silence that came before knives were drawn. Then the lights flickered, once, twice, and the air shifted. The bodyguard moved before the diplomat even spoke. He stepped away from the wall, shoulders tense, gaze cutting through the shadows. His hand rested on the hilt of his blade, fingers coiled like a predator ready to strike. The diplomat leaned back in his chair. "They come again," he said softly. From the vent above, the first assassin dropped, cloak black, dagger gleaming. But the human was faster. His blade tore upward, splitting the assassin's chest before his feet touched the floor. Blood sprayed, splashing across the polished tiles. The body hit the ground without a sound. More followed. From the walls, from hidden doors, from vents and shadows, they poured into the chamber. A dozen killers in black, their eyes burning with hunger. The diplomat did not move. He sat still, calm, even as blades flashed. The bodyguard became a storm. His blade struck left, right, forward, back. Each cut was perfect, each strike final. An assassin lunged low, his knee shattered against the human's boot. Another swung high. His throat was split before the blade fell. Blood ran like rivers across the floor. Still, they kept coming. The diplomat finally rose from his chair. His voice was soft, almost drowned by the chaos, yet every assassin seemed to hear. "You do not understand," he said. "You think we are fragile. You think we break, but we are not glass. We are stone sharpened by storms. You do not kill us, you teach us, and what you teach we use." The bodyguard drove his blade through another chest. He caught a dagger mid-swing with his bare hand, the steel cutting deep into his palm. He did not flinch. Instead, he twisted, broke the assassin's wrist, and shoved the blade back into its master's throat. The floor was slick with blood now. The chamber smelled of iron and death. The assassins began to hesitate. Fear cracked through their eyes. One tried to run. The bodyguard's blade caught him across the spine before he reached the door. Another dropped his weapon, falling to his knees. His voice shook as he looked up at the diplomat. "We were ordered," he gasped. "We were sent by—" He never finished. The bodyguard's blade silenced him, cutting the words from his throat. The diplomat's eyes hardened. "No. Survivors." At last, silence returned. A dozen bodies lay broken on the floor, their blood pooling into a dark mirror. The bodyguard wiped his blade with a strip of cloak, then stood again in the shadows, silent as death. The diplomat stepped carefully between corpses, his shoes leaving no stain. He bent and picked up a shard of metal from one of the fallen assassins, a small emblem carved into the hilt of a dagger. It was the mark of a serpent coiled around a star. His eyes narrowed. "They are not random," he murmured. "This is organized. This is someone close." The bodyguard's gaze never left the door. His voice was low, inside the council. "Yes," the diplomat said, "the rot runs deeper than they know." At dawn, the council gathered again. The chamber was heavy with whispers. Rumors of the night attack had already spread. Some claimed the humans had staged it themselves. Others swore they had seen shadows moving, blood dripping, guards slain in silence. No one knew the truth, but everyone felt it. The golden-eyed leader raised his staff. "We meet under threat," he declared. "Assassins walk our halls. Traitors breathe our air. Last night, blood spilled again." The feathered counselor stood, silver eyes sharp. "Do not hide it. We all know who stopped them, the humans. Without them, more of us would be dead." A horned alien snarled. "And what proof have we that the humans did not send the assassins themselves? They gain power from our fear. This is their plan." "Lies," the feathered one spat. "You saw the fight in this very chamber. That was no theater. That was survival." The golden-eyed leader banged his staff. "Enough, we must act. The traitor hides among us. If we do nothing, this council will tear itself apart." The robed figure with pale eyes leaned forward. His voice was smooth, almost a hiss. "And while we tear ourselves apart, the humans watch. They grow stronger in the shadows. Already their protector has killed more in these halls than a dozen guards." The chamber shook with anger and fear. Some demanded exile, others alliance, others war. And then the doors opened. The human diplomat entered, his coat brushing the floor. Behind him, his bodyguard walked, silent as always. The chamber froze. The diplomat did not bow, did not wait for permission. He walked straight to the center of the chamber, stopping where blood still stained the marble from the first attack. "You argue while knives find your throats," he said. "You bicker while enemies cut through your walls. And you dare to question us?" The golden-eyed leader rose. "You bring danger into this chamber, human. Why should we not cast you out?" The diplomat met his gaze. "Because the danger is already here. Cast me out, and it will swallow you whole. Keep me here, and perhaps you live." The council muttered, divided again. The feathered counselor stood tall. "He is right. We cannot deny it. Twice they have struck. Twice the humans stood where our guards fell. Deny it if you wish, but without them, we would be corpses. The robed figure hissed. And what price will humanity demand for such protection? Slaves? Worlds? Power? The diplomat's eyes burned cold. We demand nothing. We warned. You of the storm, you ignored us. We came because your fate ties to ours. We survive together or die alone. The chamber fell into uneasy silence. For the first time, some among the council saw not arrogance but truth in the humans' words. For the first time, they began to wonder if humanity was not their threat, but their only shield. But in the shadows, above the dome, unseen by all, another pair of eyes watched. The masked figure who had sent the assassins leaned back, unseen. His voice whispered into a hidden communicator. They trust the humans more each day, he said. Good. When the knife falls, they will never see it coming. And somewhere deep in the fortress, another dagger was sharpened. The storm had only begun. The fortress shook. Not from footsteps, not from voices, but from something deeper like the growl of a storm waiting to break. Outside the station's protective dome, the stars burned cold, yet they were no longer alone. Fleets had begun to gather at the edges of space, their hulls dark, their weapons primed. The mark of the serpent curled across their banners, a warning and a promise. They had waited for this moment, and now they came. Inside the council chamber, the air was thick with fear. Reports streamed in sightings of ships, movements of unknown fleets, whispers of invasion. The councilors argued, shouting over each other. Some demanded mobilization. Others cried for retreat. The diplomat stood in the center, coat brushing the blood-stained marble, his face calm. His bodyguard remained silent, standing behind him like a shadow that had learned to kill. You see now, the diplomat said. Voice steady. The assassins were only the beginning. They were knives sent ahead of armies. The storm is here. The golden-eyed leader slammed his staff on the floor. Lies! You bring this storm upon us. The diplomat raised his chin. No, we warned you of it. You chose laughter instead of preparation. Now you choke on the truth. From the far side of the chamber, a young counselor in silver robes spoke, trembling. Then what do we do? These fleets, our defenses are not ready. Our ships are scattered. We cannot stand against them alone. The bodyguard stepped forward at last. His voice was deep, steady, cutting through the noise. Then do not stand alone. All eyes turned to him. For the first time, he had spoken more than a sentence. The diplomat's gaze swept across the chamber. Earth has seen storms like this. We know what it means to fight when the sky itself falls. Humanity does not fight for empires. We fight for survival, and we do not lose. The chamber stirred, whispers racing between counselors. A horned elder hissed, You would have us kneel to you? You demand our loyalty? The diplomat's eyes narrowed. No, I demand your choice. You can cast us out, call us liars, pretend you are safe. And then you will die screaming under their fleets. Or you can stand with us, fight with us, and perhaps you live. The words hit like a blade against stone. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the feathered counselor rose, feathers quivering in the air. We mocked them. We laughed. But I saw the truth. Alone, they are dangerous. Together, they may save us. I say we fight beside them. The chamber broke into chaos again. Cries of agreement, shouts of anger, fear, and pride clashing. Some demanded alliance. Others demanded exile. But outside, beyond the dome, the dark fleets drew closer. Their numbers multiplied. Their weapons lit the void like faint embers of a fire that would soon consume everything. The diplomat finally lifted his voice again, calm yet sharp as steel. You do not have time to argue. The serpent fleet is already here. Decide now. The golden-eyed leader rose, trembling between pride and fear. He looked at the humans, then at his council. His jaw tightened. And if we choose exile? The bodyguard's eyes burned. His answer was simple. Then you choose death. The council chamber fell silent once more. The golden-eyed leader sank back into his seat. His staff shook as it struck the marble. Prepare the fleets, he ordered. Seal the fortress. Call the armies. If humanity will stand with us, then let them bleed beside us. The decision was made. Hours later, alarms rang through the fortress. Sirens howled, lights flashed red, and the station shook with the first strikes of the Serpent Fleet. The Council's forces scrambled. Ships launched. From hangars, weapons charged, shields raised. But they were unprepared. Their fleets were scattered, their generals divided, their pride still heavy. The human diplomat stood at the war table, watching the stars outside shift into fire. Too slow, he muttered. They will tear you apart before you even form. Align, a general snarled. Then tell us what to do, human, if you claim to know better. The diplomat leaned forward, his finger pointing at the display. You fight them like soldiers. They are not soldiers. They are predators. You want to meet them with pride. Meet them with traps, with hunger, with rage. That is how humans fight. The general stared, half in disbelief, half in anger. But there was no time to argue. The bodyguard stepped up to the table. His eyes swept over the map, reading it in seconds. His voice was calm. Pull the fleets back here. Let the serpents push forward, then cut them from behind. Do not fight their strength, make them chase shadows. One general shook his head. That is madness. We will lose entire systems. You will lose everything if you fight their way. The bodyguard said. The diplomat's voice cut through again. You asked us to speak. We have spoken. Choose now. Reluctantly, the council generals adjusted their plans. Ships pulled back, leaving gaps that looked like weakness but were traps waiting to close. The Serpent Fleet surged forward, roaring into the empty space. And then the trap closed. Council ships struck from hidden positions. Human warcraft, small and fast, darted in with brutal precision. They did not fight with honor, but with survival, striking weak points, breaking lines, vanishing into shadow. The Serpent Fleet began to falter. From the fortress chamber, the council watched, stunned. They fight like animals, one whispered. No, the feathered counselor answered. They fight like humans. But the battle was not won. A massive serpent warship broke through, larger than anything the council had seen. Its cannons lit the void with fire that tore through shields and split entire cruisers apart. The fortress shook as blasts slammed against its walls. Lights flickered. The chamber quaked. The diplomat stood tall, his eyes fixed on the burning stars. This is not their main fleet, he said. This is only the beginning. The bodyguard's hand tightened on his blade. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. Then let them come. And for the first time, the council realized something chilling. The humans were not afraid of death. They were death. Outside, the war burned brighter. The Serpent Fleet pressed harder. The council fought desperately. And in the middle of it all, the humans stood calm, steady, their voices carrying like iron. The galaxy had invited them. And now the galaxy understood what it meant to invite death. The void outside the fortress was no longer quiet. It burned with fire. Ships clashed in the black sea of space, their engines glowing, their weapons spitting light that ripped across the stars. The Serpent Fleet pushed forward, their numbers endless, their discipline sharp. They moved like a single predator, each vessel part of one body, one hunger. The Council Fleet struggled. Their ships were strong, but their formation was broken. Generals shouted orders across the comms, voices sharp with panic. Lines shifted, collapsed, reformed, then shattered again under the Serpent advance. At the war table, the council chamber shook with each blast that struck the fortress. The golden-eyed leader's hands trembled on his staff as reports poured in. The outer fleets are gone. The serpents pressed to the core. The diplomat stood calm, his eyes fixed on the map of stars above the table. His bodyguard stood behind. Him, blade at his side, gaze sharp. To him, the glowing map was nothing but prey and hunters moving across an open field. They fight with fear, the diplomat said. Fear breaks before steel. They will lose. The feathered counselor snapped. Then tell us what to do, human. You say you know how to fight this storm, prove it. The diplomat's eyes burned. Then listen, not with arrogance. Not with pride, listen to survive. The bodyguard stepped forward, pointing at the map. Pull the fortress guns here. Focus fire on their flanks. Break their rhythm, force them to scatter. A general barked, that will expose the fortress. The bodyguard's voice was cold. Better the fortress than the galaxy. Silence spread through the chamber. Then, slowly, the generals adjusted their commands. In the void, the fortress guns roared. Massive beams cut through the dark, striking the serpent flanks. Entire wings of ships erupted into fire. The serpent fleet faltered, their perfect rhythm. Broken. At that moment, the human fleet arrived. Small, dark ships darted from hyperspace, their hulls scarred, their engines burning hot. They were not polished like council vessels, nor vast like serpent warships, but they were fast, sharp, and merciless. They struck like wolves among prey, weaving through enemy lines, tearing ships apart piece by piece. The council generals gasped. What are those? That is not our design. The diplomat's voice was calm. They are Earth's. We do not build empires. We build survival, and survival demands teeth. The serpent fleet began to shift, focusing fire on the smaller human craft, but the humans fought like no other. They did not hold lines. They did not fight with honor. They struck, vanished, returned, struck again. Where one fell, another took its place. Their ships were like their warriors, fragile in appearance, but carrying storms within. The council watched. Stunned. Impossible, whispered a scaled elder. They fight without fear. They burn themselves and still return. The feathered counselor leaned forward, his silver eyes wide. No, they do not fight without fear. They fight through it. That is the difference. But the serpents were not beaten. A massive shadow moved through the void, a serpent dreadnought, larger than the fortress itself. Its cannons charged, glowing with power enough to split moons. The chamber trembled as its first shot tore across space, smashing through a council cruiser. The explosion lit the stars, scattering debris like sparks from a forge. Panic swept the council. Voices shouted, orders clashed, fear spread. The diplomat stood tall. His voice cut through the noise. Focus, do not break. The dreadnought is not invincible. Nothing is. The bodyguard's eyes locked on the massive ship. His hand touched the hilt of his blade. He spoke with steady calm. Bring me close. The council gasped. You cannot, the golden-eyed leader barked. That ship will tear you apart before you even reach it. The bodyguard's gaze did not waver. Then I will tear it first. The diplomat smiled faintly. You see now? You see what it means when humanity fights. We do not hide behind walls. We walk into storms. Moments later, a human strike team launched from the fortress. The bodyguard stood at its front, his blade strapped to his side, his armor simple and gray. Around him, human soldiers checked. Their weapons, faces calm, eyes sharp. They knew the dreadnought was death. And they went anyway. Their small ship cut through the battle, weaving past serpent fire. Enemy cannons roared, beams seared, but the humans did not break. Their craft slammed against the dreadnought's hull, cutting into its skin like a knife into flesh. The soldiers poured inside. The bodyguard led them through steel corridors, his blade flashing in the dark. Serpent soldiers rushed to meet them. Hissing, weapons ready, The humans struck without mercy. Guns roared, blades cut. The corridors filled with fire and screams. The bodyguard moved like death itself. He split through armored foes, his blade carving arcs of blood. No strike slowed him, no wound stopped him. The humans followed, relentless, their survival instinct sharper than any technology. At the dreadnought's core, the battle reached its height. Cannons shook the ship, engines burned, alarms screamed. The Serpent commander stood at the heart. A massive figure clad in black armor, eyes glowing red. His voice hissed like a storm. "You dare enter my vessel, human." The bodyguard raised his blade. "I do not dare, I end." They clashed. The Serpent's strikes were heavy, breaking steel, tearing through walls. But the bodyguard's movements were precise, sharp, each strike aiming for life itself. Sparks flew, blood spilled. The commander hissed, roaring with fury. But the human pressed forward, step by step, until his blade struck true. The Serpent fell, armor shattered, blood dark against steel. The bodyguard pulled his blade free, turned to the core, and drove it deep into the ship's power systems. Sparks exploded, engines screamed. The dreadnought began to tear itself apart. "Fall back," he ordered. The humans retreated, cutting their way back through fire and chaos. Their ship tore free of the dreadnought's hull, just as the massive vessel erupted behind them, splitting apart in a storm of fire that lit the stars. The council chamber watched through the dome as the dreadnought burned. Gasps filled the air. Some cried out in awe, others in fear. The diplomat's voice was soft, yet it carried like thunder. "This is what it means to summon humanity. You called us fragile, you called us weak, but when we rise, we do not stop." The Serpent fleet faltered, their lines broke, their rhythm shattered. And for the first time in the battle, they began to retreat. The fortress shook with cheers and cries of relief. But the diplomat's eyes remained cold, steady, unblinking. "This is not the end," he said. "This is only the first strike. The storm is larger than you can imagine." His bodyguard returned, armor torn, blade still wet. He said nothing, but his silence spoke louder than any cheer, and in that silence, the council realized the truth. Had not seen humanity's limits, they had only seen humanity's beginning. The battlefield still burned outside the fortress dome. Fragments of Serpent warships drifted through the void, glowing like dying stars. Fires raged across broken hulls, and wreckage floated silently, the graves of thousands. The Serpent fleet had pulled back, but the void was not quiet. It whispered of blood, of loss, of a storm far from finished. Inside the council chamber, silence reigned once more. The generals reported survival, but their voices trembled. Their fleets had been mauled, their soldiers shattered, their walls shaken. For every Serpent ship destroyed, 2 more were rumored to wait beyond the rim of known space. The golden-eyed leader sat slumped in his chair. His staff rested loosely in his trembling hands. He had always spoken with pride, with strength. Now, his words cracked. We survived, but for how long? If this was only the beginning." The feathered counselor stood, his silver eyes fixed on the humans. "Then we prepare for the rest. The Serpents underestimated us once. We will not allow it again." The chamber turned to the humans. The diplomat stood tall in the center, coat dark against the marble floor still stained with blood. His face was calm, but his eyes carried fire. Behind him, his bodyguard remained silent, his blade wet, his armor torn, but his presence unshaken. He was death walking on tired legs, and yet still he stood. "You have seen," the diplomat said. His voice was low, steady, yet it carried across the chamber like thunder. "You mocked us. You called us fragile. But fragile things do not break. You're assassins. Fragile things do not burn your enemy's dreadnought. Fragile things do not walk through storms and return." The golden-eyed leader's gaze flickered. He wanted to argue, to deny, but his voice failed him. The diplomat stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the hall. You summoned us into your chamber. You brought us into your war. You thought we would kneel, or break, or die. Instead, you saw the truth. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not break. And when we die, we take our enemies with us. The words sank into the council like blades. Some shifted in fear. Others leaned forward, drawn in despite themselves. The diplomat's tone hardened. The serpents are not finished. Their fleets wait in the dark. Their knives hide in your halls. You think this fortress survived because of your walls? No, you survived because humanity stood beside you. And if you wish to survive again, then you will stand beside us. The bodyguard finally lifted his head. His eyes burned with the cold fire of battle. His voice was deep, steady, unshaken. The storm grows. You cannot stop it with walls, or ships, or pride. You will stop it only with blood. And humanity has never feared bleeding. The chamber shivered. His words carried the weight of a truth none dared deny. The golden-eyed leader struggled to rise. His staff struck the marble as he forced himself upright. His golden eyes met the diplomat's calm gaze. Then what do you demand of us? The diplomat's voice was iron. Not slaves. Not tribute. Not thrones. Only an oath. Swear that you will not mock Earth again. Swear that you will fight beside us as equals. Swear that when the serpents return, and they will, you will not hide behind walls while others bleed. Swear this, and perhaps your worlds will see another dawn. The council chamber was silent. No one breathed. Then the feathered counselor spread his wings, his silver eyes burning. I swear, for my people, I swear. Humanity saved us when our own walls failed. We will stand with them. A scaled elder rose next, voice trembling. I swear as well. No longer will we call them fragile. They are iron, and iron we will follow. One by one, counselors rose. Some with shame, some with pride, but all with fear of what would come if they refused. At last, even the golden-eyed leader bowed his head. His voice cracked, but it carried. The council swears. The chamber shook. As voices joined, a chorus of oaths that echoed beneath the great dome. For the first time, the council spoke not as rulers, but as survivors. But in the shadows, the robed figure with pale eyes watched, silent, his lips curled into a faint smile. He had seen the oath. He had heard the words. And he knew the serpents would not stop. The storm was larger than fleets, larger than oaths, larger than even humanity. He turned and vanished into the dark, his whispers carrying through hidden channels. Let them swear. It changes nothing. When the storm falls, no oath will save them. That night, the fortress was quiet. Repairs began, soldiers tended to wounds, and the dead were counted. Yet silence hung heavy, not of peace, but of waiting. Everyone knew the storm had only begun. In his quarters, the diplomat stood by the window, watching the stars. His coat hung on the chair, his eyes weary but sharp. They swore, he said softly. The bodyguard leaned against the wall, blade across his knees. His armor was cracked, his skin scarred, but he breathed steady. Words are not shields. The diplomat nodded. No, but words shape armies. And for now, they have chosen to stand with us. The bodyguard's eyes never left the window, where wreckage still floated among the stars. And when they falter, the diplomat's voice hardened. Then humanity will stand alone as it always has, but not today. Today, they march with us. At dawn, the council held its final gathering. There was no laughter, no mockery, no arrogance. They looked upon the humans with respect, some with fear, but none with contempt. The golden-eyed leader raised his staff one last time. Let it be written, he said. When the serpents return, when the storm falls, the council will not Hide, we will fight with Earth. Humanity stands among us. Humanity is one of us. The chamber erupted with the sound of staff striking marble, a thunder of oaths sealed. The diplomat inclined his head. His bodyguard stood beside him, silent, his presence heavier than any word. And in that moment, the galaxy changed forever. Beyond the fortress, the serpent fleet still waited. Their knives were not broken, only sharpened. Their hunger was not ended, only delayed. The storm had only shown its edge. But for the first time, the council was ready to meet it. And for the first time, humanity stood not mocked, not forgotten, but feared and respected. The diplomat's final words lingered in the chamber, carved into every mind. You summoned us. You mocked us. You feared us. Now you have learned. When you summon humanity, you summon death itself. And the galaxy would never forget it.